Think about why so many older women choose the path of loneliness. Perhaps the answer is hidden in the depths of ancient Tibetan wisdom, which teaches us to find strength and peace within ourselves. At first glance, it may seem strange, but the facts show that women who live in harmony with themselves often achieve inner balance and live longer. What is the secret to this path? Tibetan teachings say that solitude is not isolation, but an opportunity to hear the voice of one's heart. Living in solitude helps to free oneself from worldly vanity and pay attention to one's health, thoughts, and true desires. In this video, we will reveal how ancient practices and philosophies help older women find harmony, longevity, and peace of mind in solitude. Now let's move on to how freedom from relationship stress affects the lives of older women. Many people don't even realize how much of an impact conflict, stress, and misunderstandings in relationships can have on health. Imagine the situation every day, like a fight for the right to be heard, where any word can be the occasion for a new conflict. This is how decades of Sofia's life went. She is 74 years old and spent most of her life in marriage. Her husband was a man of complex temper demanding and unpredictable. At first, she justified his behavior with fatigue or worries. But over the years, she realized that the reasons for his anger didn't matter. For example, once when she cooked his favorite stew, he threw the plate on the floor, saying it was too salty. She silently cleaned up the splinters, feeling everything inside clench with helplessness. It was even worse when he went silent for long periods of time, as if punishing her with his silence. One night, Sofia woke up to a sharp pain in her chest. She woke her husband, hoping he would call an ambulance, but he only waved his hand. "Stop whining. It's just an age thing." She spent the rest of the night alone, clutching the blanket, trying to take away not only the physical pain, but also the feeling of hopelessness. This incident became a point of no return for her. She realized that no one cared about her health and life but herself. On a cold winter evening when they were sitting down to dinner, her husband suddenly said, "I can't live like this anymore. You've ruined my life." These words hit harder than all the quarrels and reproaches for many years. He got up from the table, grabbed his bag, and left. A few days later, she learned that he had moved in with a colleague, a woman 20 years younger than him. It was said that he had been seeing her for a long time, but Sofia didn't even know it. This blow simultaneously shattered her and brought her unexpected peace. Sofia was left alone in a house filled with memories. For the first few days, she cried and felt betrayed. She thought, why didn't I leave first? Why did I put up with it for so many years? But with each week, her condition changed. She began to notice how well she was breathing, how her headaches disappeared, and her blood pressure stabilized. One morning, she went outside for a walk, and for the first time in years, she smiled as she felt the fresh, frosty air on her face. The turning point was her introduction to dance. I was walking past the cultural center where the music was playing, and my feet carried me inside, she recalls. On the threshold of the hall, she froze. In front of her, women just like her were dancing, laughing, and holding hands. Her heart twitched. It was like an awakening. I felt that life could still be bright, she says. She joined the club and started taking classes regularly. Dancing became her medicine for body and soul. This is a story of loss, but also of rebirth. Have you ever felt something oppressive leave your life, leaving room for light? Maybe it's time to let go of what's making you unhappy and start a new chapter. Remember, freedom from stress isn't just words. It's a chance to feel joy and find yourself again. Now let's look at how taking more time for yourself can make a difference in the lives of older women. Many people live their whole lives for someone else. Work, family, children. All of these things take up time, effort, and sometimes all of their energy. What's left for themselves? Think about it. How many times have you put your dreams on hold? And suddenly there comes a moment when you don't need to hurry anywhere. You don't need to please anyone. This moment can be a turning point if you use it correctly. Lillian's story is a shining example of how loneliness can be the beginning of a new life. She is 68 years old. She has spent the last 20 years devoted to her family. From the very morning, her day was packed to the minute. Make breakfast, help her husband, pack for work, take her grandchildren to school, then come home to care for her ailing mother-in-law. Every day she thought only about how to accomplish everything and did not think about herself at all. She recalls one incident that seemed to capture her whole life in a single moment. Her son, coming home from work, threw her a short, "Mom, why haven't you washed my clothes yet?" She was tired. She kept silent and just went to fulfill his request. But when she closed the bathroom door, she burst into tears. She looked at her trembling hands and wondered when it would all be over. No one thanked her. No one asked her how she was feeling, how she was feeling. It seemed her role was to be a shadow, a support that no one noticed. The turning point came suddenly. Her husband left, the children moved away, and her mother-in-law died. The house emptied, and Lillian was left alone. For the first few months, she felt lost. Her mornings became quiet and unaccustomedly long. She would sit at the kitchen table, put down a cup of tea, and just stare out the window, not knowing what to do next. She even dreaded the emptiness that overtook her every day. But one day, when she was going through an old closet, she found a sketchbook she had once kept as a young girl. These drawings reminded her of who she dreamed of being when she still believed in herself. In that moment, she realized that life had given her a second chance. She took out her sketchbook and started drawing again. At first, they were simple sketches, flowers, landscapes, figures. But in these drawings was her new breath. She did not go to exhibitions, did not enroll in courses, but her works began to decorate the walls of her own house. Gradually, friends and neighbors began to visit her. One day, a neighbor noticed one of her paintings and asked, "Did you paint this?" Lillian nodded, and the neighbor added, "It looks like it glows." These words touched her to the core. She realized that her art, however simple and modest, was becoming a reflection of her inner world, a world that had finally found freedom. How do you cope with the emptiness that sometimes comes in life? Perhaps it's at times like this that you find the opportunity to find something new, to give space to something that has long remained in the shadows. Think about what you could do for yourself today. After all, even small steps toward your dreams can be the beginning of a new life. Lillian now says, "I don't regret spending my life for others, but now I'm living for myself for the first time, and it's empowering." And isn't it inspiring to think that true freedom comes when we open our hearts to ourselves? Now let's talk about how not having constant responsibilities can positively impact the health of older women. For many, taking care of others becomes a way of life. Think about it. Early rises, taking care of the family, doing a never-ending list of things to do. All of this imperceptibly turns into a routine that takes energy. But what happens when that cycle stops? It's not always easy, but it often opens the door to a new beginning. Shelley has been married for 40 years. Her life revolved around her family. A husband, 2 children, and constant worry filled her time. She remembers making breakfast in the morning before work, cleaning the apartment, and in the evening doing laundry, ironing, and helping the kids with their homework. Sometimes I felt like I was just a machine that had to run nonstop, she recalls. Her only rest was short hours of sleep. The situation worsened when her husband fell ill. He was diagnosed with diabetes, requiring constant nutritional monitoring and medical care. Shelley devoted all her time to keeping him comfortable, but years of caring for others undermined her health. She herself began to suffer from high blood pressure, joint pain, and constant fatigue. One day, her daughter noticed her sitting exhaustedly in the kitchen, holding a packet of pills. The daughter said, "Mom, you don't think of yourself at all. If this keeps up, who will take care of us if you're gone?" Those words were a cold shower for Shelley. She suddenly realized that years of self-denial had almost destroyed her as a person. When her husband died, she felt a strange desolation, but something else came along with it. The feeling that she now had the right to think about herself. She started small. She started taking walks every evening, read books she'd been putting off for years. Gradually, her life became filled with small pleasures. She got into the habit of doing breathing exercises, and then she joined a swimming pool. "I thought I couldn't change my life, but it turns out it's never too late," she shares. Her health began to improve. Her blood pressure normalized. There was an energy she hadn't felt in years. Now, Shelley says, sometimes you have to let go of a weight to remember what it's like to breathe fully. What in your life takes up your energy? Are there responsibilities you'd like to get rid of to feel better? Maybe it's time to stop putting yourself off. The absence of constant responsibilities is not an emptiness. It's an opportunity to rejuvenate, find yourself, and start living for yourself. Shelley is just one example of finding joy in new circumstances. What do you think? What steps could make your life easier and happier? Now let's discuss how strengthening social ties can make a difference in the lives of older women. Many people believe that loneliness alienates them from others, but often the opposite is true. Leaving a familiar environment or ending a long relationship opens up space for new acquaintances and warm communication with those who really understand and support you, and bad communication with those who really understand and support you. How important do you think the support of others is to feeling happy? Miranda's story is a great example of how living alone can lead to creating a new social circle. She is 67 years old and has spent most of her life in a cycle of work and family worries. Her husband left her for another woman, and the children moved to another city. She was left alone. For the first time, her days passed in a silence that seemed to weigh on her. She remembers sitting at the window and thinking, "What do I have to live for now?" But one day, her neighbor Judy suggested she come to a chess night at the local club. Miranda brushed it off at first. "What chess? It's not for me." But the neighbor didn't back down and literally led her there by the hand. The evening began with awkwardness. Miranda didn't know how to behave and felt like a stranger. But gradually, the atmosphere in the club drew her in. There were people of different ages, each with their own story, some talking about their travels, some sharing recipes, and some, like her, were looking for support. It was there that she met Gloria, a woman who quickly became her friend. Gloria had also gone through a divorce and now made it her mission to help other women find joy in life. She told Miranda about the knitting meetings and walks in the park they organized every Sunday. These meetings became a source of inspiration for Miranda. I suddenly realized that even at 67, you can start building a new life. I didn't need something grandiose, just the opportunity to be among people who accept me for who I am, she shares. Since then, her days have been filled with new meetings, walks, and warm conversations. Now she confidently says, "Loneliness is not a sentence. It can be the beginning of something amazing." How do you build your social connections? Do you have friends with whom you can share joy and experiences? Or maybe there's a place you've wanted to visit for a long time, but have been putting it off. Consider taking the first step. Strengthening social connections not only helps you feel part of something bigger, but it also gives you health and energy. After all, when there are people around to support and inspire, life becomes brighter and more interesting. Now, let's talk about how not having to please others can give older women back a sense of freedom and joy, often in women's lives. Of women, especially in adulthood, there are obligations that they take for granted. Pleasing their husbands, children, grandchildren, co-workers. That seems to be their role. But have you ever wondered what it would be like to break free from this invisible chain and feel that you can live for yourself? Audrey's story vividly illustrates how giving up constant pleasing can be life-changing. She is 72 years old and has always believed that being a good wife and mother was her primary purpose. She married early, and her husband turned out to be a man with very high expectations. Every day she cooked his favorite meals, ironed his shirts to perfect creases, and remained silent in response to criticism. Her children were used to Mom always being on standby, to pick up, to help, to listen. Audrey often heard from her friends, "You take on too much. Think of yourself." But she only smiled. Could it be any other way? It went on like that for decades, until a life-changing event happened in her life. One evening while she was cleaning, her husband rudely threw her the phrase, "You never do anything right." These words, spoken against the backdrop of her constant endeavors, became the last straw. That night she asked herself for the first time, "What am I doing for me? What do I even want?" The answer struck her. Nothing. She couldn't remember the last time she had pleased herself, when she had allowed herself to rest or do something that brought her pleasure. After that evening, Audrey began to change her life. At first it was small steps. She stopped making elaborate lunches every day, leaving time for walks in the park. Then she took the courage to say no to her son, who asked to babysit her grandchildren. "I'm busy today." The words came hard. Not easy, but she noticed that instead of resentment, her son calmly said, "Mom, then we'll manage on our own." Gradually, her days filled with the things she loved. Audrey began knitting, as she had done when she was young, and giving her work to friends. She began to read books she had put off for years. She felt herself gradually returning to herself, to the woman she had once been before all the responsibilities and expectations. What keeps you from living for yourself? Are there things you do because of fear of judgment or habit? Maybe it's time to ask yourself, what do I really want? Because sometimes all it takes is one to start a big change. Freeing yourself from constantly pleasing others is not selfishness. It's a way to be happy, energized, and healthy. To live each day with joy. Audrey proved that it's never too late to choose yourself. The lives of older women who choose solitude are full of unexpected discoveries and changes, relieving stress, having more time to themselves, improving their health, and gaining independence, all become not only an opportunity, but a source of joy and energy. Each new day is a chance to find the harmony you've been putting off for so long. But remember, the most important thing is the ability to appreciate yourself and your desires. After all, life goes on, and at any age, you can discover something new, find happiness and inspiration. And how do you think that helps to maintain inner harmony in old age? Perhaps you have your own secrets or examples from life that you would like to share. Write about it in the comments. Your experience may inspire others. If you like this video, support us. Give us a like, share with your friends, and be sure to subscribe to our channel. Here we share stories that inspire, tips that help, and facts that surprise. Thank you for being with us. See you on the channel again. Take care of yourself and your loved ones.